Hi everyone, welcome to English Grammar. Finally, I have electricity and Wi-Fi. I had a really weird week where I felt very powerless, literally. So today I have a new friend joining me, as you can see, Wally. So basically, it's kind of like my way of saying that robots have feelings too. And robots can be nice. Okay, so that's an inside joke for whoever gets it. Okay, so today we pursue our discussion of adverb clauses. Specifically, today's lecture, we talk about the adverb clauses that are used to talk about condition or expressing condition. In the field of linguistics, there's an area that deals with conditional statements called semantics. And so it's quite, knowing this sort of very basic elementary level definition of adverb clauses is useful for those of you who are pursuing a degree in English. So anyway, so adverb clauses, continuation. So adverb clauses of condition can use the relative pronoun if, okay, the pronoun if. So an if statement or an if clause is one that expresses condition. So they express possible conditions. Usually the component of the sentence that has the if statement is the dependent clause. That's the adverb component, right? So they represent the possible condition in that if component, and then the result is expressed in the independent clause. Okay, so while the main independent clause expresses the results. So condition, if it rains, so that's the adverb clause expressing condition. Result expressed in an independent clause, the streets will get wet. So we have here our subject, verb, and an adjective, right? So if it rains, the streets will get wet, basically. So if this is true, then this will happen, okay? So a present tense is used in an if clause, even though the verb in if clause may refer to a future event and situation. So this is quite important because I've noticed that some of you struggle still with your verb tenses. So for instance, in our test last time, a lot of you still struggled with the construction of passive sentences, and your verb tenses were a little bit all over the place. So yeah, so remember this rule. If you're constructing an if statement of conditionality, present tense is used. So words that introduce adverb clauses besides if to express condition. What other words are used to express condition in the English language? Well, we have if, whether or not, even if, in case, in the event that, unless, and only if. So here's some examples brought to you by exercise 10. So exercise 10 gives you some sentence prompts, and then you can just complete it with your own creative or innovative sentence. So the rest of the sentence that you desire. These examples and exercises from Azar's book are pretty simple, basic, elementary. But what I've noticed when I ask you to do them is that you're not very creative with your answers. You're kind of like blah, like monotonous. Although some of you, granted, one of the first exercises we did, I got some really interesting responses. So for these kind of exercises, I would appreciate a little bit of creativity, because if you're exercising creativity, that kind of helps cement the knowledge that you're learning, rather than if you're just generating a generic sentence with a basic name like Tom. What's that? Ah. Sorry if you have anyone that you know with the name of Tom. That was the first MySpace friend. Anyway, so maybe it will be hot tomorrow. That's the prompt. So I put if clause, if it's hot tomorrow, condition, I'm going to turn on the air conditioning. That seems legitimate, seems well in line with our current situation. You can also use in case, which we had in our list here. The exercise doesn't tell you to use in case, but I start using them anyway. So in case it is hot tomorrow, condition, I'm going to fill up the pool. In the event that it is hot tomorrow, now in the event is a more formal construction. You wouldn't find it in informal conversations. You would usually find it in situations where the stakes are higher, like if you're at a conference or on an airplane, right? Or in public transport. Yeah, so in the event that is formal, and in case and if is informal. So in the event that it is hot tomorrow, I will go to the beach. So I will go to the beach, the result expressed by your dependent clause. Maybe you will have some free time tomorrow. There's a possibility that you have some free time tomorrow. And if you do, these are the things that could happen. So let's use if. If you have some free time tomorrow, please look over my work. In case you have some free time tomorrow, we can play Animal Crossing together. Only if you have time tomorrow, we can do a Netflix party. Now, this last conditional statement seems a bit extreme in its tone, and that's because it is. It literally limits the condition to that. If only this is done, or if only this is the circumstance, then this can happen, right? Versus if and in case leave more room for mobility and flexibility of the result. But in the last one, it's only if this happens, only if this is the condition, then etc. Whether or not the is also used to express condition, but the way that it is used is slightly different to if that we've discussed. So whether or not is a little bit weird because it kind of communicates a false sense of conditionality, because it basically says it doesn't matter whatever condition is taking place, the result will still be the same. So irregardless of the situation or the circumstance that you're stating, something will still happen or not happen, right? So example, I'm going to go swimming tomorrow, whether or not it is cold. Meaning, if it's cold, I'm gonna go swimming. If it's not cold, I'm gonna go swimming still. I don't care about the temperature, basically. It doesn't matter to me. The outcome will still be the same. So you can think about your own examples, like whether or not the quarantine is lifted, I will still go outside and be rebellious. So you have adverb clauses using even if. So even if is similar to whether or not, except that whether or not is more open and flexible, versus even if, which adds a more extreme tonality. It sounds more absolute and decisive than whether or not. You're like, even if, right? So I have decided to study engineering, even if they say it's challenging. I'm going to pursue my career in engineering. So exercise number 11. Sam laughs at the jokes whether or not. Sam laughs at the jokes, even if. So they want us to create our own sort of creative sentences. So Sam laughs at the jokes whether they are funny or not. So look at how whether or not is split here, and they are funny is in the middle. So the subject and the predicate is in the middle, and it's kind of housed by our phrase whether or not, and the component in brackets is our adverb clause. Never forget what the adverb clause looks like, okay? Don't get caught up in underlining the words that lead or head the adverb clause. When we're talking about a clause, we're talking about a string of words composed of a subject and a predicate, right? So you have to make sure that you're underlining the entire clause and not just one word. I get very angry if you just do one word because that's not a clause, okay? It's just the word that provides the clue as to the beginning of the clause. Sam laughs at the jokes whether or not they are funny. So irregardless of whether they're funny or not, he still laughs at the jokes. Sam laughs at the jokes even if they're not funny. Okay, so these are the different constructs. You can have it split, you can have it together at the beginning of the sentence, or even if at the beginning. And notice how or not could be at the end, right? But whether is at the beginning, but you will never have like, she laughs at the jokes, they are funny whether or not. But you can't say whether or not. Here I come. Think about the positionality. So they are not funny even if, you don't really have even if occurring at the end. Whether or not doesn't really occur at the end, but whether or not split, you can have or not at the end. So then you have adverb clauses using in case and in the event that. So again, both of these are still expressing conditionality, with the difference that in case has a more informal tone, and in the event that is used more in formal circumstances. So in the event of a loss in cabin pressure, yellow oxygen masks will deploy from the ceiling compartment located above you. Wow, that was unnecessary, but yeah. So it expresses the idea of something that probably won't happen, but it might. There's a small chance. So it's more formal than the counterpart in case. So you can say, I'll be at my uncle's house in case you should need me. So it's the idea that the event probably won't happen. You probably won't need me, but in case you need me, this is where I'll be, okay? So it's like just in case, basically. And you can do the same thing with in the event that, except that in the event that is more formal. Adverb clauses with in the event that and in case. In case you should need me, that's me talking to you. I will be hosting virtual office hours through Zoom. So I wouldn't put in the event that you should need me, because then it would sound like I'm being snobby or uppity. So this just goes to show that when you're writing or communicating with someone, you really have to pay attention to your audience. So then you know what are the constructions, the grammatical constructions that you should adopt for that particular scenario, so that you can foster and encourage, you know, that relationship that you want with the person. If you want to communicate formality, then you adopt the features that indicate formality. And then we have adverb clauses using unless. So unless expresses a condition that something could happen if something else was not happening. So for instance, I'll go to the movies with you guys unless you invite my sister. ¿Verdad? I'll go swimming tomorrow unless it is cold. So exercise 14, the first sentence is my own concoction, so my own innovation. Oh man, but That's why it has a typo. You can't live. You can't live in the UK unless you have a visa. True. You can't travel abroad if you don't have a passport. So notice how, according to whether you're using unless or if, the polarity of your clause is different. So for instance, in this exercise, which is actually from the book, you can't travel abroad if you don't have a passport, right? Here we have negative polarity. And then in the if clause, we also have negative polarity if you don't have a passport. But unless tends to indicate some value in opposition, right? Unless this happens, you know, something could happen. So you, in this case, you have a negative statement in your independent clause, but then in unless you have a passport is positive. There's no don't, basically. You wouldn't say you can't travel abroad unless you don't have a passport. That doesn't make semantic sense. Okay, so according to whether you're using if or unless, the type of polarity that you adopt could be different. So that's important to keep in mind. So only if expresses the idea that there is only one condition that will cause a particular result. If and only if, ¿verdad? For those of you who took, was that algebra? I don't remember. If and only if statements, logic. So the picnic will be canceled only if it rains. So only if expresses the idea that there's only one condition that will cause or yield a particular result. Okay, so if it's cold, we'll go to the picnic. If it's damp and foggy, we'll go on the picnic. If it's unbearably hot, we'll go on the picnic. So notice how if here is a little bit like conditional, it's open, but only if is especially extreme in tonality. Only if this is the particular circumstance will this happen, okay? So adverb clause using only if. You can go outside only if you wear a mask and gloves. And this is true for today. And again, we have the adverb clause highlighted in purple. And the adverb clause is headed by the word only if, the phrase only if. So only if at the beginning of the sentence, the subject and the verb of the clause of the main clause are inverted as below. That's also something to keep in mind when you're constructing an only if statement. So only if it rains, here we have the object. Will the picnic subject be canceled? Okay. If I don't get a job, I can't pay my bills. So we're gonna use unless and only if. Unless I get a job, I can't pay my bills. I can't pay my bills unless I get a job. If I don't get a job, I can't pay my bills. I can't pay my bills if I don't get a job. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And that is the end.